Okay, we are officially live.
Yay!
Despite all the little technical glitches, right before we were about to go live, my computer charger decided it didn't want to work.
And we got it working somehow.
For some reason, it's working again. So that's good. The computer's not going to die on us. With that said, we're ready to start. Before we actually start the Q&A, I want to address something real quick that I've noticed a lot of you guys mentioning in our comments and even here in the Q&A section before we started. You want to know about the Planet Tank episode 3. That is on its way.
It's my fault. I'll be honest with you. I got pretty awfully sick for about 10 days, and it made it very difficult for Brian and I to shoot. So I focused on trying to write stuff and get everything prepped and ready. And Brian will attest that it was actually a lot of information to shoot, and we did a lot of drilling down to try to simplify it so it would present really well for you guys. We want you to understand it. Like, I don't want to present something that's ultra confusing. So the good news is it's coming really, really soon.
Yeah, we've got a shot. It's in the can, and now it's just a matter of me editing it together. The plan is to have it out to you guys the first thing next week. The next video that you guys see on our channel will be that. So just wanted to get that out of the way first and foremost before we get into this.
So sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. So with that said, it is on its way. Another thing I'm going to quickly address is we have a limited time, and as usual, we have a million questions, and we can't get to all of them, unfortunately, but we're going to try our best. We're going to go through them, try and hit everyone that we can. But if we don't get to yours, remember, you can always join us when we do these every week, and hopefully we'll actually get to it. Feel free to try and use the super chat. We'll prioritize those ones if anyone uses it. But like I said, we are going to definitely try and get through to all of them when we can. With that said, I'll stop wasting everyone's time and let's get into the Q&A.
Yay!
Okay.
All right, let's do this.
Cool. All right. So because of our technical glitches, I haven't had a chance to really review. I'll just start with, okay, can Rosy Barbs be aggressive with their own species?
Any barb species can be a little bit nippy within their group and even with other fish. Rosy Barbs aren't, in my experience, particularly nippy or aggressive. So you might see some chasing and stuff. Having a larger number is always going to help. So if you have 5 or 6 fish versus 3, that's going to be a better bet. But like I said, I haven't seen a whole ton of aggression out of Rosy Barbs. I see a lot more of that from things like tiger barbs. But yeah, next question.
Okay. Okay, let me find it. Part 3 would be amazing. Yeah, we're going to get to part 3. I'm going on vacation for 10 days. I have 2 tanks, 1 plantation tank, another one is no plantation, nor any gravel or substrate. Plantation with no CO2 and fishes like betta, upside down catfish. Now, I don't see any question there, but I'm assuming it's something to do with him going on vacation for 10 days.
If you're worried about feeding, fish in general can easily go a week without food. Most fish take about 14 days before they start starving. Obviously, there are species that are an exception to that rule. That being said, even if you have somebody stop by your home every 3 or 4 days just to feed a little bit so the fish get some food, that's awesome. Your other option is to use a vacation feeder or a automatic feeder to feed more consistently while you're gone, which is obviously a better option.
Cool. How many eggs can a red rosy make in a tank?
I have no idea. What I will say, if you're talking about a rosy red minnow, I have heard and would assume that rosy red minnows, like other minnows, are going to lay eggs in the hundreds. I don't know how many would be fertile or how many would survive, but I'm sure it's a ton of eggs because most fish will use sheer number of offspring to try to ensure survival. So lots is a good bet.
All right. How long should I wait to put fish in my tank? I just got it set up last night, conditioned the water, and I'm getting the matrix in a couple days when it arrives.
It depends. You want to do something to help the tank cycle. If you want to do a fishless cycle, you can use aquarium food and a bacterial additive to start the cycle. You could also use pure ammonia, which is a little bit, I don't recommend that for everyone. Not everybody wants to handle something like pure ammonia. You could also use something like ATM colony, which is live bacteria in a bottle, not dormant bacteria, which should, in theory, instantly cycle the aquarium with nitrifying bacteria. So you want to add some sort of bacteria to the water first, and then add your fish. I will often, if it's a freshwater tank and you want to do a soft start with fish, you could easily use something like Big Al's BioSupport or Seachem Stability, and then add 2 or 3 small fish to start, and feed very little, at a time, and slowly over the course of a week to 2 weeks, you'll start to see a little bit of ammonia start to happen, and then your nitrates should almost instantly happen because of all that bacteria you're going to be adding on purpose. So yeah, there's a couple ways to do it, but long story short, you want to add bacteria on purpose first before you start putting fish in.
Cool. Next up, hey, I have 2 male guppies, which I bought 2 days ago. They have a fully oxygenated tank, but spend most of the time swimming about an inch from the surface of the water. Is this normal behavior?
It can be for guppies. Guppies will often, and something you got to understand about fish in general that are heavily bred in captivity or man-made. Like guppies, for the most part, every color you see is man-made. That's not how they look in the wild. They will get used to very quickly the idea that somebody's going to drop food into the tank for them. So oftentimes what you'll see is you'll walk by the tank and boom, instantly they go right up to the surface. So if that's what's happening, like if you sit back on the other end of the room where they can't see it and just hang out there, you'll probably notice that they'll swim around the tank more. And the second you get close to that tank, they're going to shoot right up to the surface and stay there because they think they're going to get fed. If they're not gasping at the surface, mouth essentially touching the surface of the water and the gills rapidly flaring very quickly, that's a sign of a lack of oxygen in the tank. But if they're just hanging out up there, that's not uncommon for guppies, and I wouldn't worry too much about it.
All right, 2 months ago, 2 months into a 70-gallon tank, I haven't vacuumed gravel at all. I've had no issues yet. So how essential is the substrate being clean?
Pretty essential. What you'll find is, and it might take longer than 2 months, everybody's system's different, but what you'll find is you're going to get a buildup of debris, mold, waste essentially in a solid form that hasn't broken down completely or simply won't for a very long period of time. And over time, that's going to become a nitrate factor and nitrate trap, where you'll start to see your nitrates will rise and rise and rise, and you'll do water changes and it won't make a huge dent. It'll just keep kind of staircasing its way up, even though you're doing water changes. That's probably because you've got a massive buildup of junk in the gravel. It's not as big of a deal if you've got a planted system, like heavily planted, because the plant's roots are going to help, utilize a lot of the nutrient waste that's going to be happening down there. But if you don't have live plants, this is just a regular setup, I highly recommend. It's so easy to use a gravel siphon while you're doing the water change, just suck all that junk out. You might as well do it because it'll really pay off in the long run for you in terms of maintenance.
Next up, hey Big Al, been watching your videos since you've been rocking the man bun hairstyle. That was a long time ago. Thanks for hanging out.
And I wish I was Big Al. I'm not. I'm just Thomas.
Yeah, that's true. Just Thomas. You're not just.
I'm just
Thomas. Anyway.
Oh man.
What's your take on flowerhorn fish? Any care guides? Keep up the good work.
I don't have care guides for flowerhorns, but I will tell you they're not an overly difficult fish to care for. They're a hybrid cichlid, super fascinating looking fish. They're very. They come in a lot of different varieties, let's say, which are usually a different variation of mixes of cichlids to create that flowerhorn cichlid, or just lineage, like line bred versions of it to emphasize one color or one trait or another trait. I think they're a fantastic fish. Unfortunately, they're one of those fish that do best on a tank, in a tank on their own, because they are highly aggressive, to the point where they make betas look tame. If I'm being honest, they can be super, super aggressive. So they usually like to be by themselves. They have a massive head ornament, which is called a cock. It's spelled K-O-K, I believe. I have seen flowerhorns with that head ornament so large that it's bigger than them. It's crazy. So they're super interesting. They can be a lot of fun. They're very interactive fish. They're a lot of fun to grow out slowly over time and hand feed and, you know, get used to. If you want a personable fish that's going to kind of be like a puppy dog for you, they're a great option. If you want a community tank, the worst option. But yeah, I like them. I think they're great. They're not my kind of fish. I have kept one. Actually, Chi
in our office.
and I each had a flower horn. And they ended up breeding. Mine ended up being female, and I had a feeling it was a girl. So we put them together and they bred, and it was a lot of fun.
And she had a giant one at one point in the office.
Yes, massive.
It was so cool. Though. It was like having like a very interactive pet within the office because it would follow you around and it would. I don't know. I just love that fish.
Everybody loved it. Yeah. They're just that kind of fish.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like them. They're great.
Cool. How do you make driftwood that I find in local creeks aquarium safe? Is there a certain type of wood that I should avoid?
I would avoid taking wood from any natural body of water or area. They can be difficult to fully purge because wood is porous of any kind of, you know, spore of algae or fungus or bacterium that could be in there. And you know, it's tough to find something large enough to stick a big piece of driftwood in to boil it or pressure cook it so that, you know, it's not going to have anything alive in it anymore. So I generally don't recommend it because you could bring something into your system that these aquarium bred fish are not at all capable of defending themselves against because their immune systems aren't like wild fish's immune systems anymore. So I would say avoid it. It's a lot easier just to get something that's been pre-treated for you and, you know, use that than it is to take something from the wild and risk just completely messing your tank up.
Enough said. How should I go about moving fish from an unheated tank to a heated one?
Very, very, very slowly. So you're better off matching the temperatures of the tanks first. So if you have one tank that's not heated and another tank that is heated, you have to, I'm going to assume you have a large tank maybe that you've set up with fish that's heated and a smaller tank that's not heated that you have other fish in and you want to try to amalgamate them, something like that. You need to take the fish that are in the cooler water, give them a heater, and over the course of a few weeks, raise it up to whatever that temperature is. If we're off by 5 degrees, I would raise it 1 degree a week. Like, you need to do it slow. If you do it rapidly, you could send the fish into shock. Temperature shock is one of the easiest ways to kill fish very quickly. So very, very slowly raise the cool fish up to the warm temperature and then transfer them over.
Cool. Next up, what's your opinion on beef heart for discus?
I have no idea. I have no opinion on that. I've heard that beef heart's really good. I haven't used beef heart in years. The last time I used beef heart, it was for piranhas. But the reason I can't answer you on the discus is because, like I've mentioned in previous live Q&As, I've never kept discus. It is a thing that I am, I'm not going to say ashamed of, but I'm surprised that I've never gone down that road.
Never say never, though. You know.
Well, actually, it was funny. Every time this gets brought up, and I have to admit that I've never kept discus, I keep saying, you guys have inspired me, and I will be getting some discus. I can't say when I'm going to get discus. We have all kinds of projects in the pipeline. I don't know when discus is going to happen. I have some ideas, but discus will happen at some point, I promise.
Sit tight.
It'll happen, and then I'll be able to start answering these things. I haven't done enough research into discus because I've never kept them myself.
Cool. What's the best way to get rid of snails? Been told treatments aren't really effective.
Ooh. Most treatments you're going to put in for snails aren't going to be super effective. And what makes matters worse is a lot of treatments for snails that you can use have been banned in some places. Like in Canada, snail killers have been banned for the most part. And they're often not good for other invertebrates. So if you have shrimp or other types of snails you want to keep, or crabs or crayfish, they're all toast if you use a snail killing additive. So my recommendation for removing snails is a kind of combination of manual removal, so getting rid of all the eggs that you can find and all the snails you can find by hand first, and then using fish as a form of control. So clown loaches, different species of botia loach, they'll do a really good job with snails. There are assassin snails that you can get that will also kill snails. although I find they are very slow at it by comparison to something like loaches that have a faster metabolism and a larger appetite. But assassin snails, having them in the tank as well, is not a bad idea. And that's what I would do. Avoid the snail killing additives, stick with manual removal and snail eating creatures.
Cool. Firstly, you guys rock.
Yay! Thank you. Jinx.
As for my question, I am setting up a 120-gallon freshwater tank with sump.
Cool.
Would you recommend either round or flare return nozzles?
I'm going to be honest. I've used just straight open holes for returns, like with nothing in them. I've used gooseneck or ball socket returns with flares or duckbills. I've used them with cones. I've used them with almost like little jets, so it actually comes to a tapered end, so you have more water force. There's no right or wrong answer. What I would suggest is start with nothing really. Just use whatever the tank came with, and depending on what you want to achieve, then you can put something on the end of it. And the reason I say that is you may find that whatever you stick on the end isn't working for you based on how you have the tank set up, your scape, the fish you end up putting in it. So everything that's in the tank kind of affects how you want the water flow to move and where you want it to be directed. And that's going to dictate what you want on the end of your outlet. So just kind of play with it. So you kind of let it go, do its thing, use nothing or whatever the least expensive option is to start. If that works, awesome. And then if you find, I want a little bit more direct flow in this spot, and the only way to do it is to use a flare nozzle, or maybe I want more surface agitation, but I don't want it to be, like a big rupture at the surface. I want it to be more like a sheet of water. Then you go with a duckbill, so on and so forth. Hopefully that helps.
Next up, 6 Cory, 2 dwarfs ram, 3 to 6 auto, 12 tetra. So 6 Cory, 2 dwarfs ram, 3 to 6 auto, 12 tetra of some kind, and maybe shrimps in a planted. How big of a tank should I go for?
I would say somewhere in the ballpark of probably 30 to 40 gallons would be awesome. That'd be a lot to jam in a 20-gallon, but I won't say that you can't do that, especially if you're going with small tetras. You could do it in a 20. So if you have space for like a 30 or a 40-gallon, go that route. If you don't, a 20 should suffice. Just make sure you have good filtration on there too. If you have a heavily planted tank, that's really going to help anyways, but yeah.
How many neon tetras can I put in a 10-gallon with 1 betta, 1 snail, and 5 ghost shrimp?
That betta is going to have a field day with the tetras. If your betta is well behaved, you could do probably, it's a 10-gallon?
Yep.
8. I would say 8. I wouldn't go less than 6. You could probably do 12. My only concern is the betta might chase him around. Might give him a bit of a heart attack. But if your betta's well behaved and isn't interested in chasing them, then you should have no issues.
What's your favorite tank mate or centerpiece fish for a 10-gallon tank with guppies?
Ooh.
Good one.
That is a good one. Centerpiece fish for a 10-gallon with guppies. Oh, man. I don't know. What would I do? I would honestly probably go with another livebearer. Like a nice pair of like big wild swordtails or something. Or maybe a dwarf gourami. But it's 10 gallon?
Yep.
I don't know if a dwarf gourami is going to love being in a 10. You know what? How about an electric blue ram? There you go. Or crebensis. Although 10 gallons is probably a little bit small for cribs. Oh. Take a look at those fish I just mentioned, because they're all nice.
It's nice getting a reaction like that from them.
Because it's like one of those, that's actually...
You got to dig deep and
really think about that. That's an opinion question. Again, I always tell people, I always go back to pick whatever you like. But that was a pretty specific question, so I liked it. That was good.
Well done. Next up, I have a 10-gallon tank and a 2-gallon tank. I want to know what fishes... I want to know the fishes which grow not much from 2 inches.
There is a ton. I don't have that much time. Look at all kinds of small tetras. You can also look at rasboras. There are lots of small rasboras, obviously livebearers. There's lots of small livebearers, guppies. Endlers stay tiny. If you look at white clouds, danios of all kinds. There's tons of danios that stay nice and small. Yeah, there's even Celebes rainbows. There's rainbow fish that stay nice and small. Tons of stuff.
Lots of options.
Tons, yeah.
Can you put live plants in just plain gravel with no nutrients or fertilizer?
Technically, yes. There are plants that will do okay. And actually, when we start talking about plant selection for the low-tech Planet Tank series, I'll probably touch on a bunch of those. The easiest, probably 3 that come to mind are Anubias, Anubias nana or Anubias nana petite. They do just fine in that kind of a setup. They're obviously not going to grow fast, but they'll do okay. You've also got Java moss and Java fern. Both of those should do okay in that scenario as well. Just keep in mind that whatever you do put in for your plants, like whatever effort you put in for your plants, you're going to or should get in return in growth and having your plants look really nice. So if you're going to give them very little, you can expect very little in returns from your plants. However, those plants are pretty bulletproof and they shouldn't suffer any. They should still slowly grow over time.
What Central or South American cichlids would you recommend to go in a 125 planted tank that has tetras? Should I do larger tetras with larger cichlids or dwarf chilies with smaller tetras? I love your concentration.
What I would honestly do is whatever tetras you want and apistogrammas. Apistos are very small cichlids, and you could do like rams and stuff too if you wanted to, but apistos are tiny little cichlids, but they are crazy pretty. They have a lot of character for such a small fish, and they shouldn't bother your tetras at all, and they really, really do well in heavily planted tanks or tanks with a lot of cover. Apistos are a little bit nervous. Having the extra cover makes them feel really comfy, and you can watch them flirt with each other and show off and flare up, and they're gorgeous little fish. Look up apistogrammas, you won't regret it.
Cool. Hope you guys can get away from those kidnappers that keep you in that room, guys.
They won't let us out ever.
We're chained to these stools just for these Q&A.
We laugh, but inside we're crying.
Yeah, that's right.
At least they give us water.
They gave me really hot tea. Okay. Do you have any suggestions for platies? I just got a new tank.
Platies? Like what kind of platies?
I guess so.
Man, Mickey Mouse ones. I'm not even joking. There is something called Mickey Mouse.
Really?
Yeah. Whatever you like. Honestly, I'm the kind of guy who, if I'm going to go out and get like live bears of any kind, I will pick one of every single one they've got and collect just a ridiculous assortment of colors, and then watch them breed and just see what comes of the mess. Well, that's the cool thing. I've mentioned this about guppies too. You've got all these different color morphs that are line bred with genetic traits. If you just get a whole bunch of different ones and let them breed, the babies will come out looking all kinds of wacky because they're going to take traits from different parents of different colors, and you're mixing things together. And I'm pretty sure like that's how half of these morphs even exist now. Like they happened by accident, and then people just went, okay, let's just keep trying to make that happen over and over. And then you've got a Mickey Mouse platy whose butt looks like it has Mickey Mouse's head on it. So yeah, that's what I would do. Get one of each.
Cool. Okay, we have a couple of questions here. I'll read them out, but I know that it's probably better if we forward them on to our support team at the head office.
Okay.
Any recommendation for white spot disease?
If you mean ick, there's a lot of things you can do for ick. One, adding salt to the water can help. Obviously not a ton. You have to follow the directions on the container, but furthermore, if fish with skin and stuff are affected adversely sometimes by things like salt and medications, so you got to be careful. The other thing you can do is raise the temperature slowly to about 80 to 81 degrees, depending on whether or not your fish can handle that temperature. What it does is it speeds up the life cycle of the ick parasite. So it helps basically them grow up and die faster, which means if you're treating the tank or treating the fish, the ick's basically going to go through its life cycle faster and then perish quicker because of it. So you can also add a slime coat additive to the tank in the form of a water conditioner with a slime coat additive to help add, an extra barrier for your fish to help push that ick off. And then obviously you can try medicated foods that have garlic and that kind of thing in it to also help boost the immune system to ward off ick. The one thing that I've always liked to kind of compare ick to is like a cold virus for people. You don't get ick, just like we don't get a cold unless something's wrong with our immune system. If you have a strong immune system, you're not going to get a cold. If your fish have a strong immune system, they're not going to get ick. Something probably happened that lowered their immune system to cause them to get ick. So whenever you see ick in your tank, it should be an indication for you to start looking at possibly what went wrong to allow your fish to get ick. Why is their immune system weakened? What's happening in the tank? Always test the water, see if you have elevated ammonia, elevated nitrate, even nitrite. Maybe, your pH has swung like massively for some reason. Just do a little bit of investigating. But again, like Brian said, reach out to our support team. They're going to ask you a bunch of questions regarding the parameters of your tank and all kinds of stuff. And they can help you drill down to find out exactly what it is, because it's not possible for me to do that with you through a camera through this kind of chat scenario.
Yeah, the more information, photos, anything you can send to them at the email address that I dropped here in the chat, anything you can send to them right off the bat will help them get back to you much more.
Yeah, and they'll basically walk you through a plan for you to help your fish get past that ailment. Having a back and forth with our team is going to help prepare you for dealing with that scenario in the best way possible for your specific tank, for your specific fish.
Yep.
So yeah, hit them up and let's get you through that, because I know anytime fish are sick, it sucks.
Yeah. So again, I dropped that in the chat section. Make sure to email them if you need to. Same goes for this question. If you have any advice here, great. If not, we will refer them to the email address. Any preventative meds for parasitic attacks?
Garlic. Garlic medicated food is a great immune booster, and it will help. Beyond that, I hate pre-medicating. I don't like medicating tanks if I don't have to. But if you're getting a shipment of fish, let's say, and they're wild caught fish, and they're probably coming in with worms or something that you're going to have to treat, then at that point, you're going to want to look into medications specific for parasites. And a lot of the time, it's something you're going to want to mix with the food so that they ingest it directly to kind of push it through. But it's tough for me to recommend anything specific because, again, depending on the fish, depending on yada, yada, yada. So hit up our support team, give them all the information, and we can best prepare you for whatever parasites you think you may be encountering. Just let us know, basically, when you email in, why you want to pre-treat for parasites, what parasites you think you're pre-treating for, where your fish are coming from, what kind of fish they are, etc., and we'll work out a plan for you.
Yeah, and same with these live Q&As. The more information you give us in your questions, the better prepared he'll be to give you an answer. So when you do email them, as much information as possible will be very helpful for them to give you the tools you need. Next up, I know you're not really a pond guy.
That's okay.
But someone asked, hey, I plan on making a pond. Any recommendations or tips? Any information will help?
Lots of recommendations and tips, I guess. When you're planning a pond, pick the location you're putting the pond in carefully. Obviously, if you want a flat pond in the ground, you need to mark it off and make sure you're not on a gradient. Because if you're on a gradient and you start digging a hole and the hole's like this, then one side of the hole's got to be way deeper. Maybe you'll build like a waterfall or something there to deal with that gradient. But and you also want to make sure that before you start digging, you have somebody from your gas company or whatever come out and mark all of the gas lines, electrical lines, everything.
Call before you dig.
Yes, everything on your property before you start sticking shovels in the ground. The only real exception to that is if you're doing an above ground pond, in which case you usually use a prefab pond, a preform, and then build like a box around it.
Right.
In which case you don't have to worry about digging. But you know, just whenever you're planning a pond, plan where the piping's going to go right up the get-go when you're, you know, putting everything in. Figure out if you're going to do, and this will take a lot of research, but figure out if you're going to go natural bottom for your pond or if you're going to do a pond liner. Some areas you can't do a natural bottom very easily because the ground is going to suck up every ounce. If you're in Arizona trying to do a natural pond, I'm sure it's a pain in the tush. But yeah, ponds are just as, if not more complicated than aquariums in many ways. So just do a ton of research and definitely call before you dig. You won't believe how many times I've seen people like be installing a pond and hit a gas line or hit a water line or hit an electrical line. Is not good. So just be careful.
How do you keep fish from eating your live plants?
Good luck. If they eat plants, you don't keep those fish with plants. That's really the answer. There is no other answer.
Put them in a timeout?
No, that won't work. If you're going to put herbivorous fish in with plants, they are going to eat them. The best plant I can think of keeping with herbivorous fish that are going to try to eat plants that may not be successful at eating this plant is Anubias. It's got a severely rigid leaf, and a lot of the time fish have a hard time chewing through that leaf. So you may find that an Anubias is going to deal with the punishment a lot better. But beyond that, good luck. It's just one of those things.
Cool. This is not a question, but it brings me to something I wanted to quickly mention. Hey guys, I'm 15 and from Vancouver. I visit family in Toronto a few times a year and always love going to your store. It's one of the highlights of my trip always. That's awesome to hear. Just out of curiosity, which store, we have a bunch in the GTA. Which one do you go to? Just curious because I did want to mention that this Thursday, I'm actually flying out to Toronto with my family this week. And this Thursday, I wanted to visit one of our two corporate stores in Toronto, either Mississauga or Scarborough, and do a live stream, do like a walk around live of the store. So if anyone's interested, I'll be posting details in our community tab for when to join that live stream of, you know, one of our two big corporate stores. They're really cool places. So make sure you join in for those just to kind of get an idea of what we offer in a store setting. Because yeah, they're one of my favorite places to go, even with my kids, to just like walk around, have them look in all the tanks. Like my 3-year-old just loves it. So
that's where my aquarium career started. I was, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and my dad took me to Big Al's. And then when I was 16, I got a job at Big Al's. And then when I was 32, I'm still at Big Al's. It's a great place. Honestly, if you're a hobbyist, it's a lot of fun to walk through a Big Al's store, and you will probably walk out with something in your hands because it's hard not to.
Yeah, no, me too. I'm not a fish guy. Like I go in for the, like I have a milk snake. And so I love going in and looking at the reptiles, the tarantulas, all that stuff. Just super fun to be in there. So I'm going to do a live stream. So make sure you tune in Thursday. Details forthcoming. Next up, how well does the 1 inch per gallon work?
Oh, not awesome in a lot of instances. First, I'll kind of touch on why the 1 inch per gallon rule doesn't always work. If you have a 10-gallon tank and you can have 10 inches of fish, you can't have one 10-inch fish in a 10-gallon tank. That's the first limitation of the inch per gallon rule. The inch per gallon rule also only really applies for freshwater. In saltwater, it's a much lower number. You can keep less fish in saltwater for the same volume of water that you can in fresh. But beyond that, it's not the worst. So if you consider, like in a 10-gallon tank, that you shouldn't be really putting a fish any larger than 2 inches in a 10-gallon tank for it to be comfortable. I mean, you could go up to 3. Like everybody has their own opinion. This is mine. Then having 5 2-inch fish in a 10-gallon tank is fairly appropriate. You know, that's not the worst rule. If you have 1-inch neon tetras and you have 10 of them in a 10-gallon tank, that obviously works just fine. It's just when you start getting into, I'm going to have 2 5-inch fish in my 10-gallon tank. The inch per gallon rule goes out the window at that point. So I think as long as you're being reasonable with the length of the fish that are going into the tank, and you calculate your inch of fish per gallon based on a fish of maximum X length going into that tank, because anything bigger would be inappropriate, then it works just fine. Lots of people push more than 1 inch of fish per gallon. They usually have very heavy filtration to help with that. They're usually keeping fish that like to school together, so that way, you know, you're not cramming a bunch of fish that don't want to be side by side in the tank, and then it's, you know, it works better that way.
Awesome.
I think I answered.
Yeah, I think so.
I think I answered it. Sometimes I get lost going in loops in my brain thinking about things, and I have to like circle back around and ask myself if I even answered the question.
And I'm here in the chat, like typing away, and I just hear silence. I'm like, oh, I think it's.
I think
he's ready.
So yeah, I hopefully I answered that.
Awesome. How slow should the flow be for a sump to get denitrate and or marine pure blocks to actually work?
That is very hard to calculate. If you have a chamber in the sump, there's two ways to tackle this problem. So way number one is to have a chamber in the sump where you can keep a lower flow rate so the rest of the sump can act as it normally would. Because if you slow the flow down in the sump too much, it'll basically inhibit its ability to actually filter the tank properly. You want, you know, X turnover, and you know, at least 10 times in a lot of cases. I mean, I've gone as high as 20 times, but let's say you want 10 times turnover through the system, and your biomedia, your aerobic biological media is going to want that. So it's getting lots of nutrient passing by, lots of oxygenation from water turnover for that tank to, you know, benefit from that biological media doing its job. And then on top of that, you're trying to get anaerobic bacteria in a specific type of media. Now, denitrate is made to kind of give a place for anaerobic bacteria to thrive, even if it's in water that's going to be moving a little bit faster. The media is specifically designed to kind of slow the water flow down through the media. But like I said, there's kind of two ways to do it. You either have a portion of your sump you can slow down. I would slow it down as much as possible within reason, and then you'll know when it starts working because you'll start testing your tank, and you'll see your nitrates slowly dropping over time without you doing water changes. That's how you know it's actually starting to work. And it can take a while to play with that to actually get to a point where it's working properly. The other option is to, if you have a sump that's just ripping water through it, you know, and there's no way for you to slow the flow down for that media, bury the media underneath all of the other media. So the water has the hardest time getting to that media because it's buried under the rest of your biomedia. That way, as your water is flowing through, let's say your matrix is on top and your denitrate's on the bottom, it's going to go through your matrix. It's going to have a harder time getting down through that denitrate, and it's going to probably go up and past it. You'll get a little bit of water flow through the denitrate, but not much because most of it's going to go through the matrix and then back out. You're burying it where there's lower flow. That's your other option.
I recently bought my betta fish, and I didn't really have a chance to look it over, but when I did, I noticed that the tail was missing a lot of its tail color. And in the month I've had them, the tail is growing.
Okay, so some bettas, I'm assuming by tail color you mean transparent. It's missing tail color. Some bettas actually have transparency to their fins. So you'll see some color, like oftentimes it's barred by white, and then all of a sudden it's clear. So it'll look like it's missing a portion of its tail, but it's there, it's just clear. That can happen. That's not a bad thing. It's just there's no pigment in that part of the tail, and that's just how that fish has grown. Young bettas, as they grow, are going to get more finnage as well as they get larger. Just like, you know, roosters, as when they're young, because I have chickens now. When they're young, cockerels, you can tell that they have some of their rooster feathers, some of their, you know, their neck feathers and their saddle feathers, but they don't look the same as when they're an adult, and then they have their full plumage and they're all puffed up, and the fish can be the exact same. A young fish will often not have its full finnage, especially if it's a fish that gets very showy finnage. Not just bettas, this also applies to other fish that get really showy finnage. Lots of cichlids that get bumps on their heads, for instance, won't develop that bump until they're much older. The cock we were talking about earlier. So I wouldn't think much of it as long as there was no visual damage to the tail, as long as there was no like obvious bacterial or fungal infection to the finnage. It's probably just got some transparency to its fins, which can be completely natural. And as you take care of your beta and it grows and it gets older, it may just get larger fins because that's what fish do as they mature.
All right, next question, and I'm going to just preface this with, we get this question a lot, and I think it's really important to say that I think going forward, we're going to try and limit how many times I ask you this, or maybe like it'll be, okay, quick top 3, because we do get this question a lot. He's asking, starting a marine community fish tank, I'm wondering, what should I keep? And there's so many factors that go into what you should keep that it's kind of tough for Thomas to really tell you. He can tell you, hey, keep this, but there's no fun in that.
No, there isn't. My go-to answer for a lot of this stuff, which Brian has touched on, we've answered this question, this type of question a lot. You got to get what speaks to you. When you walk through a store and you see a bunch of fish and they catch your eye and you're like, man, that really inspires me and I really want to keep that fish, do the research and find out everything you can about that fish, and maybe shoot for that to start with, and then see what's compatible with it. For a lot of people, when you're starting, especially with marine's a whole different ball game because compatibility is different in marine than it is in freshwater. There are a community tank in freshwater versus community in marine. The marine's always going to be a little bit harder to balance in my experience. But I think if I had to pick, let's say, 3 fish to start off with, if I was going to be like, hey, start with these 3 fish, you're not going to go wrong. A pair of clownfish. Clownfish are crazy easy to keep. They're a damsel. They're super hardy. They are dopey as hell when they swim. It is adorable to watch. They've got a super interesting symbiotic relationship that they can have with anemones and corals, not just anemones, because anemones can be a little bit more advanced. Whereas a soft coral, like a big mushroom leather, oftentimes clownfish will go ahead and host the tentacles of that coral, and that's a very easy coral to keep. So I think a pair of clownfish is a great place to start. There's all kinds of designer clownfish these days. And if you're not into designer fish, you want natural, there are a ton of different species of clownfish. One of my personal favorites is orange skunk clownfish. Super cute. They are just cute as hell. I love them. On top of that, at that point, I usually say pick a goby. Yellow Watchman goby is a great one. They're really easy to keep. They also can have a symbiotic relationship with pistol shrimp. So that's another really cool feature about them. Yeah, we actually have some video of that in our Evo tank that Josh has at the office. Yes.
We filmed that, and you see the little the goby and the pistol shrimp living symbiotically. It's really, really cute.
And then I would say a wrasse. Some people may advise against a wrasse because some smaller wrasses. My favorites are 6 lines and 4 line wrasses because they are least likely, in my experience, to jump out of a tank. So having a top is always the best thing. But if you don't have a top, because lots of tanks these days are open top, rimless open top tanks, they do really well. They're a utility fish, in my opinion, as well, because they will help keep your pod population from getting out of control as you get copepods and amphipods in the tank. They will help combat things like montipore eating nudibranchs and flatworms. So a 6-line wrasse or a 4-line wrasse is a great addition. Just keep in mind, when you add a wrasse like that to the tank, adding other wrasses can become very difficult because they're super territorial, but usually just towards other wrasses. But that's 3 great starting species. There is a crazy amount of fish that you could get. Do research, see what speaks to you.
Walk around your fish store,
Ask questions when you're at the fish store. And I remember when I was doing my first marine tanks, like I was in utter awe every time we got a shipment of fish and something new came in, or a shipment of corals or inverts, and I was like, what is that? And I would obsess about it for a while, see if it was even compatible with my stuff, and then, either add it to my tank or not add it to my tank. But anyways, have a lot of fun with it.
Good answer.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not even going to try and pronounce this. You'll probably know what it is better than I. What? Okay, I'm not the only one. Oh, it's not just me.
I haven't heard of it.
Have you ever had a Shoutedeni puffer?
And how do you take care of it? I haven't heard of it, but now I'm going to have to look it up.
Is that a typo maybe? Or
no, you should Google that.
Okay.
I don't know. But I will tell you, I really do adore pufferfish. Puffers are again, one of those fish that are basically like a puppy dog.
Spotted Congo puffer.
Show me a picture. Oh yeah. Okay. I've seen them. I have seen them. I've never kept one. They're a smaller puffer species, it looks like. They don't get huge. They look super cute. They look similar to a green spotted puffer. Oh, adorable. Depending on the species you're looking at, some puffers are actually brackish, so you got to be careful that if you want to go with a true freshwater puffer, that you make sure that it can handle full freshwater. Otherwise, you should be adding some salt to the tank, to marine grade salt, to recreate its natural habitat as best as possible for longevity of the fish, and also so that it looks the way it's supposed to and acts the way it's supposed to and is happy and healthy. Like I was saying, they're super, super interactive, adorable fish. Unfortunately, puffers are one of those fish you often can't keep with other fish because they will either nip them or eat them. They're usually predatorial. One of my favorites, but they get very large, are Mabu puffers. They're awesome. Yeah, puffer fish are fantastic. They're just puppy dogs, and they're a lot of fun. But they're one of those fish you kind of got to keep by themselves for the most part.
Next up, can algae remover, the liquid kind, be deadly for your fish?
Anything you add liquid kind to your water, anything, even if it's a powder actually, in the right concentration is toxic. So you got to be careful. If there are directions, you follow them to a T always. And I personally don't mess with algicides. I don't use them. I find other methods. Algicides are a short-term solution. You'll kill all the algae in your tank, but algae will always find a way to come back. So whatever's causing the algae in the first place is what you want to fix. It's either your nutrients are out of control, your lighting is on way too long, or you're getting natural sunlight. There is something causing the algae. So rather than nuking your tank with chemicals, try to drill down why the algae keeps showing up, then do manual removal, and then keep fish and inhabitants in the tank, shrimp, snails, etc., to help keep that algae at bay. And then you don't run into the problem anymore.
Next up, goldfish with tropical fish?
No, I don't recommend it. Goldfish, for the most part these days, especially fancy goldfish, they're pretty dumpy and dopey. They aren't the most amazing swimmers because of that, and they often do well in tanks where they are just competing against other goldfish for food and just not in a tank full of ornaments that they could accidentally hurt themselves on. And a lot of the times when you have tropical fish, you're going to put like driftwood or castles or whatever the heck in with them. And it can make it harder. And tropical fish will outcompete goldfish for food hand over fist every day just because they're way more agile. So yeah, I personally don't mix them. Not saying you can't keep goldfish warmer, but because you definitely can. Their metabolism increases quite a bit when you warm them up, and they eat a lot more and they poop a lot more because of that. So they become messier and messier the warmer you keep them. But yeah, they also grow faster and look nicer. But yeah, I don't mix tropicals and goldfish. I don't recommend it.
Can you use another filter as a pre-filter for an Eheim Pro 3 canister filter should it be motorless?
Okay, wait a minute.
I think you broke, Thomas.
No. So I'm going to assume you're asking if you can daisy chain canister filters and use one to pre-filter the water going into your other one and only have one motor going. So what I would say is not to do that, because the motors on a canister filter are geared specifically for the volume of media that one canister filter is holding. The second you add something else in the way, you're putting more strain on that motor, and you will probably drop your flow quite a bit. So I would say don't do that. Your best option, if you want to pre-filter before going into the canister, Eheim actually makes a pre-filter that you can put, and it's a plastic I think it's 3 compartments, it might only be 2, but it's a pre-filter that you just attach the inlet of your Eheim, and it's got 2 sponges in it. And the water will go through those sponges before it goes to the Eheim, and then it'll save you from having to go into your Eheims often at the expense of going into the tank and taking those 2 pre-filter sponges out, rinsing them and putting them back every once in a while. That's your best bet, because it does not put the same kind of strain on the filter as having a second filter in front of your filter.
This guy here you're talking about?
Yes, that's it exactly.
I will link that in the chat just so you can have a look.
It's 2 compartments. And I've actually used this, and it works really well. Very, very well. It also works incredibly well if you're trying to keep fry out of your filter. So that's another really good use for it. Fry or shrimp or whatever.
Cool. I just linked it in the chat, so feel free to click and have a look at that real quick. Next up, any good insight on how to identify male, female blood parrot?
You'd have to look at their, is it a cloaca for fish? You got to look at their bum hole. If you Google, I'm not going to try to explain it. It's not easy to explain. But if you Google venting fish, try looking up venting parrot cichlids, and you might be able to get a picture of a male and female vent for parrot cichlids and an explanation on how to vent them properly. That's probably your best bet. I'm going to assume you'd have to vent them because they're not sexually dimorphic. They look almost identical, males and females. They're also a man-made fish and maybe sterile. Not entirely sure. They may be mules. Ooh.
Research time.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. But I'm going to guess venting is probably the easiest way to determine sex on a cichlid like that.
Cool. This one speaks directly to episode 4 of our Planet Tank series, but we'll answer this question now. What substrate for a planted aquarium?
That question is open-ended. Low-tech, high-tech. I'm going to give you a generalized answer. If you're going to do a planted tank, you should get a substrate for plants and not just use gravel, even if you're doing low-tech. And the reason is a standard gravel is not going to transport nutrients to the roots in the same way a planted substrate will. I also will personally recommend avoiding doing dirt bottom tanks. Dirt bottom tanks are messy as all can be. And depending on, whether or not you're going high tech or low tech, dirt tanks can also come with an absolute ton of fertilizer in them that you don't necessarily want right away because it can cause algae blooms and all kinds of stuff. Not saying it can't be done. Obviously, people do it, and there are fantastic looking tanks that use dirt. I just don't use it. I also avoid sand because sand can be very hard to work with, like true sand. Mm-hmm. It can compact. It's heavy as heck, and if it compacts, roots have a hard time going through it. It also, again, is inert and does absolutely nothing for nutrient transport. So plant specific. One of my all-time favorites, just general purpose planted aquarium substrates is Carib Sea Eco Complete. I've used it multiple times. It has never failed me. So I would say go with that. Yes, you can use it for high or low tech. It'll do a good job either way.
Okay, and I'll link that also in the chat in just a minute. Next question, can you put a Pleco with live bearers?
Absolutely. I would stick with a small species of Pleco only because they are usually the best at cleaning algae, and the smaller species are a lot easier to maintain long-term. Like, you don't want to stick a common Pleco in your 10-gallon tank and then wonder why you've got a 6-inch Pleco in your 10-gallon tank. And they get massive. They go like 24 inches. Huge fish. So I would say Ancestris or a bushy-nosed Pleco. You could also look at cute little gold nugget Plecos or, green bulldog Plecos, rubber-nosed Plecos. There's all kinds of cute little Plecos you can get. My favorite are Ancestris. I've always found them to do the best job at algae eating. But yeah, if you want something fancier, leopard frog Plecos. Actually, I had a beautiful pair of leopard frog Plecos in the 265 that are now with a friend of mine, and I hope he breeds them and sends me babies. They're cute.
Next up, this is more of an opinion than anything I think they're looking for. Most unethical fish to keep as a hobbyist.
Arapaima.
Why? Any
Arapaima? It's the largest freshwater fish on the planet. What tank are you going to put in it? I don't know. Most unethical. God, any fish that is endangered. If it is endangered, don't keep it in the tank. Leave that for breeding programs and universities and stuff like that. Anything, anything that's been poached from the wild, that shouldn't have been, anything that's been smuggled, anything that's illegal in your province or state or country. Those are unethical fish to keep. Just the reason I said Arapaima is because it is literally the largest freshwater fish I can think of, and there's no way anybody's going to be able to keep it its entire life.
I see.
It is also one of the coolest fish on the face of the earth, as far as I'm concerned. It's the largest of the arowana species, like their genus.
Right.
God, they're cool. Okay.
I like the Carib Sea cichlid substrate. Can I use it in a tank with fish other than cichlids? Can I use that substrate in a planted tank?
Not in a planted tank. So cichlid substrates, something you got to know about the cichlid substrate line is that they will buffer the pH, and they're going to knock the pH up usually above 8, which is fine for lots of different types of fish, but not so great for plants. Anubias will be okay. Once again, Anubias and Java fern probably won't care too much. But if you want to keep live plants, go with a planted substrate. EcoComplete is going to be a lot better. It's also not going to mess your pH up and send it through the roof. The African cichlid mixes are really just meant for buffering the water for your African cichlids. And then they have a bunch of different types just for aesthetic purposes. So whatever you prefer visually, but they're all going to, if they're African cichlid substrates, they should all be buffering the pH way, way up, which you're not necessarily going to want. So something to consider.
What should I do for an aquarium lid? Because I made a custom 10-gallon tank and I can't find a lid that fits it. I've been thinking of getting a wire mesh for a lid, but I don't know. Any ideas?
You could. Do you have a trim on your tank that you made? So your other option, you could definitely go with like a screen top. We actually sell Red Sea DIY mesh lids. And they use a, you could probably even find that link if you wanted to. They use a kind of transparent, thin plastic mesh that you spline into a frame that you cut to size specifically for your tank.
What was it called?
Red Sea DIY mesh top, I think it is. So that you can essentially make a cover to keep your fish in for whatever size tank you have. Whatever weird shape you've got, it doesn't matter. Or you can go to your local hardware store, grab some Lexan or just basically thin acrylic and cut that down to just sit on top of your tank. It won't look very good necessarily unless like I said, you have a trim that you put on the tank and then you can like kind of fit it perfectly into that trim. But that's another option. Just keep in mind that Lexan a lot of the time is going to warp when you have humidity only on one side. It'll absorb water on that side and bend away from it.
Okay, I found it on our site. It's a Red Sea net cover.
Yeah, there's different sizes.
Different sizes. See, there's a drop-down menu on the product page. You can kind of choose whatever you think you'll need. But it's there and it's in stock. So if you wanted to look into that, I've just linked it in the chat. So have a look and see what you think. Next up, fishes with dendrobates.
Dendrobates. You probably could. Here's what I'm going to say. Most dendrobates don't swim very well or at all. So if you're going to have enough water to keep fish in with them, you're going to run the risk of them drowning. Dendrobates are frogs, dart frogs specifically. I love dart frogs.
He does love them. A whole lot of us can attest to that.
Yeah, I've kept them for years. I love darts. But yeah, I would say you got to be careful because you're going to run the risk of them falling into water and not being able to get out. So keep that in mind. I mean, I'm not saying dendrobates can't be found in the wild near water that they could potentially drown in. But whenever you have a closed system, and you're forcing them to be next to a body of water, you're just increasing the chance that they may fall into it and not do very well. So I would probably not do it. However, I'm sure it's possible just with the noted risk. You've got to know what the risk is. So now you know there's risk.
Cool. We are coming up on that 1 hour mark.
Oh, okay, so are we starting the fire round?
We can, yeah. We'll just jump into it. Will clown loaches brought into a tank eat snails also attack shrimp? Brought into a tank to eat snails also eat.
if the shrimp are small enough, they may. If we're talking like full-grown shrimp, maybe not. But clown loaches also get massive. Woo! Possible. Anyways.
What are your thoughts on a tank with an Oscar and a Bisher?
That'll probably be okay. Oscars shouldn't want to mess with anything sitting on the bottom of the tank very much. And as long as the Bisher is large enough, or Polypterus species is large enough that the Oscar can't fit it in its mouth, you'll probably be all right.
Can assassin snails be housed in the same tank as shrimp? My shrimp fry tank is snail infested and thought assassin snails would
I don't know. I would, any kind of predator, I would always assume is going to be opportunistic towards small defenseless prey. So even if it's not directly on their menu, baby shrimp or shrimp eggs being carried around by a bigger shrimp may seem like a really easy meal to an assassin snail, but I don't know for sure. Next.
I have a 180-gallon African biotope tank with a school of Congo Tetras, 30. Do you have any recommendations for additional species, especially benthic and topwater dwellers, trying to keep it strictly African?
African butterfly fish. I'm serious, that's it. Okay, go.
I want to start an Oscar male and female tank, but if you buy 2 to 3 inch, so how many would I need? Tank size is 5 by 2 by 2 feet.
If you want to try to raise up a bunch of small Oscars to get a decent male-female ratio, sexing them when they're, I don't know if you can sex them when they're really small. Again, it's probably venting, but I don't know how easy it is to tell when they're that young. I would say for, what was it, 5 by 2 by 2?
Yep.
You could easily probably start with 12 fish. And as they grow, start weeding out the fish that you don't want to keep and sexing them as they're large enough to be sexed or old enough to be sexed.
Good.
You won't end up keeping them all, but it's a good number to start with. So you should end up with a decent ratio at the end.
Cool. I have a 29-gallon aquarium, and I'm thinking of getting peppered Cory catfish, but I don't know how many to put in.
How big is the aquarium?
29-gallon.
Peppered Corys. 6. I think 6 would be a good number.
Okay. Cherry barbs, can they go with angels?
Cherry barbs with angels. If the angels are younger, then I would say probably okay. If they're adult angels and you put in young cherry barbs, the angels are probably going to kill them.
Okay. How do you guys feel about mixing substrates? I have 2 bags of Eco Complete. I was thinking about putting that under some type of aqua soil like Amazonia.
Ooh, I wouldn't mix aqua soil with a substrate like Eco Complete. Eco Complete is a hard substrate. It's a porous, almost like a volcanic rock type substrate. If you're going to do something like aqua soil, I would mix it with other soils that are similar. So aqua soil is, I believe, a pelleted soil product. So if you crush it, it's just going to turn into powder. So I would stick with other substrates that are going to be similar like that instead of mixing them. But that's just my opinion. I know there's all kinds of aquascapers who do other things, like put all kinds of different substrates down first and then put aqua soil on top of it. And those other substrates act as fertilizers and vitamins and minerals for the plants over a long period of time. So, but no, I would, if you're going to do something like aqua soil, just do aqua soil. If you're going to do something like Eco Complete, just do Eco Complete. There's no point in mixing them.
Hydrogen peroxide, have you used it to keep algae down?
Yes. I'm not going to talk about that very much because it is very easy to overdo it with hydrogen peroxide and wipe your tank out. Very easy. The plants will be fine, but you can kill fish pretty quick. So yes, I've done it. I do it personally. I don't often recommend it because it can be dicey. Next. I'm
rescuing a blood parrot cichlid from my friend because it's fighting and I have a 55-gallon tank. But what else could I put with this fish? I will most likely also do a Pitcairn catfish.
Blood parrot. Other blood parrots, other parrotfish should be okay. Pictus cats should be fine too. But I would stick to other cichlids of roughly similar size and roughly similar disposition. So more of the same is not a bad thing. And I would do at least 3 to 6 fish. Woo. It's going to be a lot for a 55, but just to try to keep aggression down.
What's your best recommendation with Adobe?
Adobe.
Adobe.
Best recommendation for what? exactly.
I don't know. I guess maybe something to keep with it.
Best recommendation with Adobe. Other similar size cichlids of similar aggression level.
Okay. My Chinese soft shell albino turtle has become sick. He's not eating any food.
Yikes.
I've gone to a nearby vet, but not any improvement. Can you help? I'm sorry, we can't help you. I didn't read that whole thing before I started reading it. There's not much we could do for you. I'd say go back and visit the vet.
Yeah.
Or go see another vet, get a second opinion. Probably a good idea.
Here's the thing. You got to find, especially when you're dealing with exotics, you have to find, and sometimes it's a drive, like 2 hours, like it sucks, but you have to find a vet who specializes in exotic pets and specializes in turtles. Super important. So do some, join some local forums and see if you can get a recommendation for a good exotics vet in your area who deals with turtles. And then you should find some headway. If the vet can't help, there is nothing in the world I think I'm going to be able to tell you, unfortunately. I'm not a turtle expert. I wish I was.
Or a vet. Yeah.
Or a vet.
Yeah.
I take my animals to vets. I want to put that out there right now. If my dogs aren't acting right, they go to a vet. If any of my exotics aren't acting right, they go to a vet. If I don't know what's wrong, they go to a vet. So yeah, you just got to find the right vet. It's tough sometimes, but that's the best option.
This person, their flame dwarf gourami died with a pink spot on the side of its body. Any ideas why?
Flame dwarf gourami, pink spot on the side of its body. I'm going to assume the pink spot is probably some kind of lesion or ulcer. It's hard to tell by description. A photo might help. Contact our support team. If you have a picture of the fish, they might be able to help with that.
Yeah, answer that
question.
It
could be so many different things, but they can help drill it down for sure. Which is important because you want to know what the heck happened,
yes,
so that you know that your other fish are either in the clear or not in the clear. This may be a one-off incident. It might not. Okay, go.
Is it okay to use hard plumbing with a canister filter inside the cabinet? Or for that matter, is it okay to use hard plumbing from the filter to the inlet and outlet pipes?
You can use hard plumbing. Nothing's going to go wrong with using hard plumbing. You just have to support the pipes because hard plumbing weighs more. So you'd want to get pipe hangers and attach them to the stand. And then what I would actually recommend doing at that point is running small lengths of soft tubing from the bottom of those pipes to the canister to deaden vibration, which is actually something I talked about during the 265 build. I used a short piece of flexible tubing between the pump and the hard plumbing to allow for movement so that vibration isn't carried through the hard pipe. But yeah, you can do it. I personally wouldn't. I would probably just run my canister with the tubes. But you definitely can do it if you want to.
What plant substrates can you directly add to an established tank?
If you pre-rinse well, you can do any of them really. And one of the tricks that I've done in the past for trying to add substrate to a tank is to get a long clear tube and a funnel, and stick that rigid tube right down to where I want to add the substrate, have the funnel sitting in that tube, and then have a friend pour that pre-rinsed substrate into the funnel to go down into the tube so that it gently rides down the tube and then goes to where you want it to go in the tank, rather than just sloshing it in or trying to shovel it in. And that works really well to keep the amount of mess down as you add it into the tank.
Cool. What do you think? 5 more? 5 more?
Let's do a few more. What do we got? Yeah, let's do 3. Let's do 3 more.
3 more. You guys think I could keep a crebensis alone in a 20-long community?
Wait a minute. Is it a community or is it alone?
That's what it said.
Do you mean one crebensis? Yes, you can. The fish isn't going to get depressed or anything. It'll be fine. So yeah, you can keep one crib in there.
All right, and I've seen you guys, Kiki, who's been answering a lot of questions in our chat, and CypherTunes talking a lot about this, but we'll answer it anyway. Can I use a bowl tank for any freshwater fish?
A bowl tank. I wouldn't use an actual glass fish bowl for any fish ever. No, I personally wouldn't even use it for a beta. I am not a proponent of them. I think they're a bad idea. The history of the bowl had a place in time way back when. But in this day and age, it's completely inappropriate, especially with what we know these days. However, that said, there are orb-shaped aquariums that are fully functioning aquariums with filtration and heating and everything. And if that's your jam, go out and find yourself an orb aquarium, something that's got a bowl look, that is large and not just a glass bowl, so that you can have filtration and heating and everything else that is vital to keeping fish alive long-term without much effort from you.
Awesome. How big of a tank should you have if you want to keep an Oscar?
I would say minimum is 90 gallons. You could probably do 75, but Oscars get big and they're messy and they eat a ton. So 90 gallon is probably your best bet. Coolio.
Okay, we'll pick one more. Let's see. Awesome, people thanking us. That's nice.
Yay.
I have corner filters, so it should be placed underwater, so I can place the filter in the middle. Oh, okay, he's just clarifying on the bowl tank thing. We started getting a lot of people answering, so there's not many questions getting through. I want a large Bishier. Which species grows the biggest? I just bought a 300-gallon aquarium.
Oh, man. I don't know off the top of my head, but I will say that there are a few species that get quite large. I think saddle polypters get quite big. I'm going to see if I can look this up real quick.
While he does that, we are reaching the end of our stream. He's going to look that up real quick. But as always, I do want to mention that if you like these Q&As we do, if you like interacting in the chat with everyone and interacting with us, with Thomas, and getting him to answer your questions, the best way to support us and make sure we can keep doing these videos for you, whether it's these Q&As or whether it's our other videos that we produce.
Del Hezi. I was close. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's right. No, you finish your question then, you know.
Yeah, they get over 12 inches. So that's pretty big.
Cool. Awesome.
Keep going. Sorry.
All right, no, that's fine. Yeah, so I guess that's pretty much a wrap for us answering your questions, guys. Unfortunately, we could only go for just over an hour today, but hopefully we'll be able to do longer ones in the future. Anyway, the best way to support us, like I said, is if you're in the U.S., shop online with us at bigelfpets.com is the best way to support us and make sure we can keep doing these vids. Support us if you live by one of our super centers here in Canada. Make sure you drop in and hang out there and support us there. And if you don't live near a store in Canada, bigelfpets.ca. Again, the more support you guys give us there, the more we can keep doing these videos and bigger and better and more awesome videos. So we appreciate all your support that you guys do give us.
Thank you.
Showing up to these Q&As and asking these questions.
It's a lot of fun.
Makes our day.
Yeah.
And I love to see the enthusiasm that you guys have for the low-tech Planet Tank series.
Yeah.
I'm getting like every day I get notifications on my phone from our comments saying, when's the next one? When's the next one? So that's awesome.
Again, I'm really sorry about that.
He was sick. You don't have to apologize for being sick, but we're back on track.
Oh, yeah.
Now we've got the third one shot and ready, and it's I just have to finish editing it and put it up next week.
Yeah, we shouldn't have any more slowdowns like that. That was a lull that was unexpected. But...
yeah, it was a big one, but that's all right. Thank you guys so much for being enthusiastic about it. And that said, thanks again for showing up. Next week, I'm going to be doing live streams from our store, maybe even a couple stores if I can swing it.
Nice.
And then on
old stomping grounds.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be a lot of fun. So a couple live streams from some of our super centers. And then on Friday, I think we're going to be doing another Q&A from head office with Josh and a few more of our employees.
Nice.
At head office. Are people who are amazing, have amazing aquariums, a depth of knowledge. So we're going to be doing another Q&A next Friday with them. So tune in.
Awesome.
That's all I can say. Keep an eye on our community tab because I do post updates there for you guys to stay up to date with us and to know what the heck is going on. So thanks again, and
keep on tanking.
That's simple. All right, guys, take care.